But now let's put some of those big prime time stories of the day that we've been talking about here on the program in perspective. Most notably, the targeted killing of the Al-Qaeda leader Ayman Al-Zawahiri in a drone strike in Afghanistan by the United States. And here in Nigeria, a national survey that's attempting to gauge the mood of Nigerians and the things they're concerned about ahead of the 2023 general election. Well, to help us consider all that and more, I'm joined for the rest of the program by our analyst, who will offer his perspective on the news and talking points of the day. The journalist, policy strategist, and Arise News analyst, Waziri Adio. Good to see you, mate.
Same here.
What's your sense of the significance of the assassination of the Al-Qaeda leader Ayman Al-Zawahiri by the US?
I think it's very significant. Though some people will say it's more symbolic, than operational, but it doesn't matter. The thing about the U.S. is that, once they identify you as the enemy of the state, they will go after you. And this is a lesson that we have to learn, and, you can go after people in a targeted way. They sent a targeted drone after him. So whether you are still powerful or not, and as the ambassador said, the ideal outcome would have been to put him in a jail and lock him up for life and deny him that, that exit in a blaze of glory, which terrorists like.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't matter. They've taken him out. What American presidents always say is that wherever you are, we're going to take the battle to you. That is a lesson we need to learn as a country, that these guys are waging wars against Nigeria, and we need to spare no means, to make sure that we take the battle to them. And we send out the message that wherever you are hiding, we're going to come after you. That's
a very good point, and I want to come to that in a minute and kind of expand a bit on that. Yeah. But how much does this involve the role of the US in the world, the need for America to reassert itself, this killing of an old enemy, this settling of old scores?
Well, for the first time in recent history, what happened on 9/11 in 2001 was quite significant. At that point in time, America was the preeminent, world power. People were talking about the end of history, the end of bipolar war.
That's
and
true.
America was there, strutting on the stage, and these people took the battle to the doorstep of Americans, right? So America, had to respond, and that was what led them to Afghanistan. That was what led them to Iraq. Things didn't pan out exactly the way they wanted, and they had to retreat and all of that. But
so there's a lesson there, isn't there?
Yeah.
That you don't do this to us. You don't bring the fight to us, because you will not get away with it, basically.
Absolutely. You remember when 9/11 happened? For some time, President Bush was missing. Eventually, he went to the World Trade Center, and he had this stuff, and he said, we're going to smoke you out. We're going to get you. That is the kind of message that people want from their leaders. And at every point in time, people want, even those who don't like America, the world needs America to stand out as you need a force that is reassuring, a comforting force.
And in that sense, I mean, because you were talking about lessons that Nigeria can learn from that. In that sense, beyond going after those people, just the symbolism of your president being there at a time of great trial for the country, that personification, that physical presence means so much for people, doesn't it?
It does. A commander-in-chief is also the comforter-in-chief.
Absolutely.
You need the person to be there, not missing action. Like I said, for some time people didn't even know where President Bush was, but eventually he came out and he redeemed himself. In fact, that was the moment at the World Trade Center Ground Zero. That was when the image of Bush turned around, and people started looking at him in a different way. So you need every leader who have a moment, and it's yours to seize, right? So Bush seized his own moment, and this is what we also need to do in this country. It's not just enough to send press releases, to send people. you have to be there for your people. People will have to feel the presence of the state and be reassured that they have a leader that is ready to do the needful and to spare no means.
So that's one of the things
that,
we should be looking towards in 2023.
Absolutely,
yeah.
Absolutely. You can't outsource this job. You have to be there with your people in good times and also good times. And, what's the point of electing you
if you're not there to fulfill the needs
Absolutely.
of the job?
We know that you don't expect the president or whoever you elect to go to the battlefield and be carrying guns and all of that. But there's something about the presence, the reassuring presence of your leader. When they tell you that we're going to do this, you trust them, you believe them, right? So it's not, and how do they do that? It's by being there with you.
Absolutely.
At that, critical moment.
Absolutely. And in that context, and beyond just the physical presence of the president, you were talking about important lessons. Let's just dig deeper into that. Nigeria, of course, battling its own terrorism and insurgency and banditry and so on. What can we learn from that?
Well, the first thing is that you don't allow a problem to fester. By the time you allow it to stay on for too long, it's not just that those who are waging war against your country will be emboldened, right? Opportunists will also cash in. Because they see that, people can do this and get away with it. People will see all kind of opportunities there.
Hence the rise in banditry.
There are people who are doing that for ideological reasons. There are people who are doing it for religious reasons. There are people who are doing it for commercial reasons. So, but the thing is that every human being, except those who are far too gone in the religious, ideological realm, most people, including those ones, take a calculated risk. So if you see that, what you are doing, there are no consequences, that what you stand to gain is more than what you stand to lose, you are going to do it. Right. So the first thing we need to do is to make sure that there's consequence for action. Right. You act on time because there's a cost for not acting on time. Right. Then you make sure that you let people know that the urgency, of the issue at hand, and you put all the resources that you have, to face this. Let's look at this issue of insecurity. No matter what you achieve as a government, without tackling that, it's people who are alive, it's people who are secure that can enjoy other things.
Absolutely.
So it's apart from the fact that it's the primary responsibility of government, right? It makes the most sense, and it's only when that is achieved that people can appreciate other things. So you need to ensure that you face this very squarely, and you demonstrate with every muscle in your being that this is a serious problem, and you are doing all the things that need to be done.
We're going to move away from all this in a minute, but just before we do, we're going to talk about the survey and so on in a minute, but it is noticeable and notable that if you look now, Africa is one of the places that Al-Qaeda still has some reach to its sort of franchise. So you have groups carrying out jihadist attacks in places like Mali and Somalia, for instance, who have franchised and are swearing loyalty to the Al-Qaeda leadership. So that's where they've got, because they've essentially been the challenge of Islamic State and the threat of Islamic State has actually minimized the threat of Al-Qaeda, but they've kind of moved out into Africa now, haven't they?
There are many forces, that have moved into Africa, which is more like, ungoverned territory. With the collapse of Libya, with the death of Muammar Gaddafi, and all kind of stuff, So you have ISIS, you have ISWAP, you have Al-Qaeda, you have all kind of groups, that are, paying allegiance to all these other groups and linking up with them, and with the free flow of arms, with the free flow of money, and all of that, and so all kind of stuff, going on. So in the Middle East, the world powers, at some point, you had the US, you had the UN, you had all of that, interfering there. Nobody is interfering in Africa. So the countries are left to their own devices. And these countries have, limited capacity, especially some of these things, the swat of land, where these things happen is quite expansive, and, getting the needed resources, to do that. So you have that in Mali, everywhere, almost everywhere, the Sahel, and you have all kind of forces that have been smoked out of other places or that are finding it difficult to operate in other places that have now converged in Africa.
Now let's turn to that survey that we talked about in the program, done by the Africa Polling Institute and Business Day newspaper. No surprises that the issues that are important to Nigerians as the elections approach are the economy and, as you mentioned, insecurity.
Yeah, not at all. With or without the survey, these are issues that will be on top of the mind of Nigerians. We know the situation. We know what is going on in the economy, around the economy. You don't have to go too far. Just look at the official figures. Whether it's the inflation figure, whether it's the what's it called, the exchange rate, whether it's the interest rate, whether it's food inflation, whether it's
the debt burden,
whether it's
the
the
revenues,
revenue
the government.
So it's but beyond all those things, because sometimes there's a divergence between the official data and the lived reality of people. That is not the situation now. People can feel the pinch in their pocket, right? About a year ago, you buy diesel for how much? About 200 naira. You buy it for more than 800 naira now. You go to the market, almost every week, the prices change.
And yet people's incomes are not changing.
They're not changing.
Yeah.
Right. So people are actually feeling this. So it's not just about, sometimes you say, oh, the GDP is growing, government revenue is growing, and all of that. And people say, oh, this is jobless growth. This is just growth on paper, right? No, this is decline in the pocket, in the livelihood of people, in people's lives. So people can feel it. So definitely economy is going to be a major issue because this is something that people can feel because you have to eat every day. And people are struggling to make sure that they're able to keep their families together. So that is that. Insecurity is also more widespread. An argument can be made that the government succeeded in pushing back Boko Haram, not just in the northeast, but also in places like Abuja, Kano. Sometimes people forget this. In Abuja, we had bomb blasts almost back to back for about 6 or 7 times, including the headquarters of this day, the police headquarters, the UN headquarters, the UN house, and all of that, Nyanya twice, Emma Plaza, and all of that. There was a time in this town where you go everywhere, including churches and mosques and supermarkets. They have to use metal detectors on you, and stuff like that, right? But yes, and you also go around, most government offices were barricaded, roads were kind of closed and all of that. We moved away from that. That should be acknowledged, right? But I haven't said that.
But the threat is returning.
But yes, that is coming back. Because sometimes people lose a sense of perspective. People say, oh, they are moving to Abuja now. There was a time when Abuja was actually under a siege.
Yeah, but that's no consolation for people, is it?
It's not, but it's good to acknowledge it. But I haven't said that. What you will say in 2014, 2015 will be insecurity localized in the northeast and some portions of the country like Abuja and maybe Kano and maybe Kaduna. What you have now is more widespread. You have insecurity in the Niger Delta, you have insecurity in the southeast, you have insecurity in the north central, you have insecurity in the northwest, right? So you have a more generalized sense of insecurity. In 2015, you can travel to Kaduna by road.
Right.
You have to be very brave, to do that now.
Well, absolutely.
So we need to, put
it in perspective.
Yeah,
right.
But at the same time, people need to, is an issue that bothers everybody.
Right.
People are feeling like, under siege, and they're saying,
So they want to see that with their leaders. We've got less than 2 minutes left. Were you surprised that 67% do not consider religion a factor in deciding who should lead Nigeria? I mentioned that because it's interesting that in assessing what they were looking for in the candidates, it seemed quite important that the new president had to be someone who could unite the country. and the perception that the country is very divided leading up to the 2023 election, but they didn't consider religion to be an issue?
Okay, I would say a number of things around the poll. I know the African Polling Institute; they are very reputable. I've seen their polls in the past. So whatever I'm going to say is without prejudice to their credibility. But polling business can also be tricky. Right? We know about Brexit. We know about what happened in the US in 2016. That the polling result will tell you the results of the polls will tell you something. Reality will tell you another thing. So because sometimes the sample might not be representative enough, or people might not be telling you exactly what they feel. True. And all of that. So there are two things I can take from the result on religion. When Nigerians say they do not care about the religion of their next president.
67% said they don't care. There's still a percentage that cares.
Yes. So the first thing we need to see is that I've looked at the sample size, about 1,020 people. Whether you can extrapolate from that to the entire voting population, we look at that. So that is one. Two is that when people say we do not care about the religious identity of the next president, it does not necessarily mean that they do not care about whether you have a same religion pairing, right? That you have an all Muslim or all Christian.
Yes,
I don't know whether that's a question that they ask them.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. This is also one of the things that will be tested in the election. Does religion matter to people?
Right.
And if it matters to people, does it matter more than the economy and insecurity?
Well, that's something we're going to have to be watching. Waziri Adio, journalist, policy strategist, Arise News analyst, an interesting chat mate. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and Washington. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.